the Futurist, that the using of nanoparticles, and then the red and far right. This is certainly a glimpse into the future, because I don't know many other people that have had that healing experience.
Yeah.
and maybe didn't have the guts, didn't have the nuts to do it, to be honest. That's another thing as well. But when you talk about those modalities that you used,
Mhm.
well, there's so many to get into, and I'm fascinated by the near and far infrared light. If you wouldn't mind sharing for me and for the listening audience, why you think why that works, what's the benefit there, and then let's jump back into the nanoparticles, the C60, because that's fascinating. There's that old saying, the truth is what works. When 9 of the top 13 from the CrossFit Games are using your stuff, then that's phenomenal.
Yep. Yeah, it was actually. It was a hell of a turnout this year. I mean, those guys crushed it. They're all insanely good athletes to start. One of the guys called me the very first day that he tried it, and he said, "Hey, we have mutual friends." So he had my number, and he called and said, "Hey, is this legal?" I said, "Yeah, it's legal." And he goes, "I just put up weight," and he was Sam was the fellow's name, and he was getting out of the actual CrossFit Games and doing the Masters, which is like the 35 to 39, because in CrossFit it's so crazy intense that at 35 you're a Masters athlete, right? Yeah. You've aged out. And so he called, and we were talking, and he said, "Yeah, man, I literally ran my fastest run time today ever, and I put up weights, like I lifted weights today, and I was hitting things that I haven't been able to hit in 7 and 10 years respectively." And he's like, "This is crazy." And I said, "Yeah, well, it's activating more skeletal muscle, right? It's not that there is more muscle. It's not that it's amping you up in some ridiculous way. It's just better recruitment, right? So the muscle's there."
Is it transient, Iron? Is it transient? Like, just say, if I use it for a week and I smash it, then I go off it, all the benefits are gone.
Yeah. It takes a little bit longer to cycle out of your system, but yeah, it is transient. So it's not going to stay that way. Now, the one thing that I will say is, because I've been doing this longer than probably just about anybody else, and have taken arguably more of the stuff than any other creature on the planet, but you can use it to enhance your workouts, because you don't get the like DOMS, the delayed onset muscle soreness. That just doesn't happen the same way, right? You can get some, but you have to really push yourself. So I was just at a meeting last week with the head of Satori, and that was one of the companies you referenced there, Satori Neuro. And Randy, I had told him this before he started using it, and he said he felt so good when he was working out, because he wasn't getting sore, he wasn't fatiguing, so he just kept pushing, and he was hitting all these PRs and just kept hitting consistent PRs. And he was fine for a day, and then everything kicked in, and he kind of, did the dead bug thing where his arms folded up and he could barely move. And that's why I always caution people, is you have this boost where you're not going to fatigue at the same rate, because you're using more of your muscle. It's going to nix a lot of the lactic acid that you would normally use as a signal to say, like, slow the hell down, right? You're feeling the burn, chill out a little bit. You don't feel that stuff as much, so you can go longer and harder. And that's fine if you do it appropriately. But if you push too hard, that's why I was saying that, connective tissue isn't set up for that. And truly, at a certain threshold, your muscles aren't set up for that. One of the things that's really tricky is, typically, if you push yourself to an extreme limit, there's a thing that happens called rhabdomyolysis, where you basically, you have a plume of too many proteins from too much shredded muscle, or something like that. I mean, there are a couple of different things that can actually trigger it, but that's kind of one of the common causes, and a lot of CrossFit athletes get that. But this, basically, because it acts in a lot of ways almost like an inline dialysis filter in your blood, is going to stop that from happening, because it's going to bind to those things. And it's renally and hepatically protective, so your liver and kidneys are protected and buffered from a lot of the things that would normally cause a problem. So you can work out harder than you would have ever been able to work out without the detriment. But your body is a progressive system, right? You're not supposed to go, Yeah, instead of lifting 100 pounds 20 times, I decided I was going to just drop 2,000 pounds on the bar, do it once. You
Yeah.
know, there's a very different outcropping of effects when you drop 2,000 pounds on somebody's chest as opposed to 100 pounds 20 times. So you've got to, even though you can do these different things, you have to sort of respect your physiology and act appropriately. So yes, the effect is transient, but it does allow you to do things like develop to a level that you wouldn't have been able to
Yeah,
develop
yeah.
before.
That's what when I said transient. Obviously, if you're lifting heavy and you're doing more volume, well, then that'll drive adaptation into the soft tissues. So
Exactly.
that benefit, obviously. But I
Yeah,
just was thinking from the performance perspective. Can you share as best as possible the mechanisms that create
sure.
response from C60?
Yeah. So, well, again, it triggers super precipitation. So you actually recruit more of the muscle. But
Yep.
what's actually happening is, so you bind it to a lipid. When you bind the C60 to a lipid, because normally it's hydrophobic, right? It will not bind with anything that's aqueous. So water is a no-no. But when you bind it to a lipid, it actually hits the cell membrane. And there's a good National Institute of Health paper on this. It hits the cell membrane, moves through the cell membrane, delocalizes from the lipid, and then the nanoparticle moves into the intermediate layer between the inner and outer membranes of the mitochondria. And the mitochondria are kind of, everybody says the powerhouse of the cell. And so what happens there is when it goes in there, it blocks a lot of the oxidative stressors that would normally be impinging energy production inside the mitochondria. So in the lab, what we found is just with that, before I added any other things to really amp up the energy production cycle, there was at the low end an 18% and the high end 58.3% increase in ATP production. So we were able to measure, yeah, it's huge, huge, huge difference, right? So it's like not only are you giving more gas, you're expanding the size of the cylinders in the motor, right? So you get this huge effect. And 58.3% is, for anybody who knows anything about ATP, that is an insane jump. And that was before I added nicotinamide mononucleotide and resveratrol and PQQ and CoQ10 and all the different things that I put in there. And there was kind of a lot of tinkering with it to figure out how biologically to balance everything. But the net effect is you end up with a much more robust energy production cycle just from the C60. So in the electron transport chain, when you're able to block the oxidative stress load, it allows a lot more to actually happen. So it's kind of funny, people think like it's producing more energy. It's not actually producing more. It's blocking system loss. It's like if you had a house and you were trying to condition the interior of the house because it's really hot outside, and you left the doors open, the windows open, and didn't have insulation in the walls. This basically closes the doors, closes the windows, and puts insulation in the walls. So it's naturally, we have the capacity, we just lose it because we're not good stewards of cellular function. And the interesting thing is, when you're younger, your body functions more effectively. As you age, your body loses mitochondrial efficiency, and that's why people become lethargic. Their hair grays out. I mean, there's all these things. You lose your hair, it starts to recede. Like all these things are because your body is designed to survive. It's not designed to survive terribly well, right? It prioritizes survival. It doesn't prioritize aesthetic beauty that much in a lot
Yeah.
of cases. So there are a lot of systems that downregulate, like melanocytes producing melanin, so that you can actually get your coloring and things like that, right? Like that stuff dips out because your body doesn't really care. It's kind of immaterial. It just needs to keep going, keep hunting. It's kind of like the Far Side cartoon with the Jurassic calendar. It's with the dinosaur calendar just says kill something, eat it, kill something, eat it. Over and over. It's like the daily to-do list. From a biological perspective, it's kind of what we're doing, right? Cells just want to survive, so they prioritize survival. They don't prioritize, wellness and longevity, and they just prioritize not dying,